We'll be reading Veratrum album from Homeopathic Drug Pictures by M.L. Tyler. It's a long one, so I guess it'll be like 2 parts. Veratrum album, White Hellebore. Everybody knows Veratrum album as one of the great remedies of collapse. Collapse with icy coldness, with profuse cold sweat, especially on the forehead, with profuse evacuations, with great thirst. Great thirst for cold water. But far from everybody knows Veratrum album as a notable pain remedy, or in its mental aspects, as Hahnemann knew it and left it for us, as Hahnemann's most faithful followers have experienced and taught it. It is an old folly to substitute opinions for facts. Hahnemann gave us facts, results of actual experiments carefully conducted, and the experience of one of the most astute observers who ever put pen to paper. But since his day, some of the teachers of homeopathy, wise in their own conceits, have crippled knowledge and therefore usefulness by substituting their opinions for facts. Perhaps the worst of these was Hughes, whose pharmacodynamics was dubbed by his contemporaries homeopathic milk for allopathic babes, who always were ready to go one better than Hahnemann by his dicta and omissions, has robbed us of or belittled much of Hahnemann's experience. We'll also read actually from Hughes' Pharmacodynamics. I think I have the book. I will check, but I think I do have the book. He threw doubt, for instance, on Hahnemann's observation that a single dose of Drosera 30 is quite sufficient for the homeopathic cure of epidemic whooping cough. According to the indications of symptoms, where he enumerates the cure taking place with certainty in from 7 to 9 days under a non-medicinal diet. This was not the homeopathy of Hughes, who favored repeated doses of low potencies from which, according to his own showing, got very inferior results. But Hughes was obliged to print a footnote in later editions of his work to the effect that this observation of Hahnemann had been confirmed by other doctors. And one may say that recently one doctor after another has volunteered with great joy results from following Hahnemann's direction in regard to whooping cough. Later writers again have robbed us of a lead to good work by ignoring Hahnemann's black type Drosera symptoms in regard to bones and joints. It is true that and indeed only sphere was whooping cough and laryngitis, thus certain cases of even rheumatoid arthritis where Drosera might have helped have been left uncured. As in regard with Veratrum album, Hughes, from his lofty assumption of critique, is pleased to say that the marked symptoms of insanity, which stand at the head of Hahnemann's list of mental symptoms, were observed upon insane patients taking the drug and are worse than useless. Imagine that, worse than useless. And in Dr. Hughes' opinion, and in Allen's Encyclopedia, where one of the contributors was Dr. Richard Hughes, a footnote to the following effect: all symptoms of the mind and disposition occurring in the first 2 classes, and all that spasmodic phenomena manifested by the third, have been bracketed, as the doses administered were too small to induce them. Again, opinion versus fact. One cannot help wondering how much of Hahnemann has been deleted or slurred by Hughes. One and only discovers these things gradually. Herring's Guiding Symptoms has no hint of such follies. Kent, a far greater teacher and prescriber than Hughes, or so one gathers, realizes the importance of Veratrum album in insanity as well, as we shall see. Meanwhile, here Hahnemann on the subject. It is quite false that patients affected with emotional and mental diseases require and bear enormous doses of medicine, as physicians still imagine. In such cases, he says, health is often but little affected and the patients are often very robust. The malady has settled in the fine invisible organs of the mental and emotional spheres, undiscoverable by anatomy. And in his experience, patients suffering from mental and emotional diseases soon regained a healthy state of their mental and emotional organs. That is, perfect recovery of health and reason by doses as small as those that suffice for other non-physical maladies, but only of the appropriate and perfectly homeopathic remedy. One may say here, by the way, that in the provings of drugs to ascertain their powers of sick making, mental and physical, in order to use them to neutralize a like sickness, the mental symptoms are best elicited by the provings with the higher potencies. But Hahnemann knew what he was talking about in the matter of insanity. He describes in lesser writings how, having been for several years much occupied with the treatment of diseases of the most tedious and desperate character, included hypochondriasis and insanity, in particular with the assistance of the reading Duke, he established a convalescent asylum for patients affected with such disorders. In Georgenthal near Gotha, he treated and cured the Privy Secretary of the Chancery, one Clockenbring of Hanover, a man who, when in health, attracted the administration of Germany by his practical talents for business and his profound sagacity, as also by his knowledge of ancient and modern lore and his acquirements in various branches of science. His almost superhuman labors in the Department of State Police, for which he had a great talent, his constant sedentary life combined too with nutritious diet, had gradually deranged him. Possibly also his copious indulgence in strong wines contributed. Anyway, the last straw was some horrible lampoon which completed his mental catastrophe. Hahnemann describes in detail his wild maniacal condition, now quoting from different authors in different languages. Now throwing himself in agony of sobbing at the feet of his amazed attendants, now hacking and tearing to pieces his attire and his bed, now running about naked, bellowing, demanding food or drinks which was split and fouled. At first, Hahnemann merely watched him while he treated him and causing him to be treated with the greatest kindness and consideration, so earning his confidence. Then gradually, with remedies no doubt at all, Veratrum among them, the big man's reason was gradually restored, indeed so perfectly restored that a governmental post, but less arduous, was found for him. And out of his experiences, this is what Hahnemann has to tell us in regard to Veratrum album. Physicians have no notion of the power possessed by this drug to promote a cure of an almost 1/3 of the insane in lunatic asylums. At all events, as a homeopathic intermediate remedy, because they do not know the peculiar kind of insanity in which to employ it, nor the dose in which it should be administered in order to be efficacious yet not injurious. In his treatment of mental patients, Hahnemann entirely departed from the treatment customary at that time, which was brutal in the extreme. His absolutely new methods he thus describes. I never allow any insane person to be punished by blows or other painful bodily chastisements, because there can be no punishment for the involuntary actions, because these patients are always made worse and not better by such rough treatment. He, Clockenbring, often used to show me with tears the remains of the marks of the ropes which his former guardians had employed in order to restrain him. The physician in charge of such unhappy people must indeed have at his command an attitude which inspires respect, but also creates confidence. He will never feel insulted by them, because a being that cannot reason is incapable of insulting anyone. Their outbreaks of unreasonable anger only arouse his sympathy for their pitiful state, and call forth his charity to relieve their condition. And again, in the organon, he deals with the treatment of mental aberration, raving madness to be met by calm fearlessness and firmness, plaintive melancholy soothed by silent compassion and gesture and expression, silly loquacity listened to in silence with attention, indecent behavior and obscene language treated with indifference. Raving madness has to be met with calm fearlessness and firmness. Plaintive melancholy soothed by silent compassion, by gestures and expression. Silly loquacity listened to in silence with attention. Indecent behavior and obscene language treated with indifference. Destruction and injury of objects prevented by placing them out of reach without reproaching the patient. Corporal punishment or torture to be absolutely avoided. Even the administration of REM medicines need not require coercion. The smallness of the dose and the tastelessness of the homeopathic medicines allow them to be mixed with the patient's drink, obviating any kind of compulsions and not exciting his suspicion. He adds, there is nothing that embitters the insane and augments their diseases so much as expressions of contempt and ill-disguised deception. This is interesting. He adds, there is nothing that embitters the insane and augments their diseases so much as expression of contempt and ill-disguised deception. Physician and attendants should always treat such patients as if they regarded them as rational beings. The black letter symptoms. I think I will stop here. I'll read the black letter symptoms tomorrow. Thank you.